This tutorial covers all the form features which are built into GraphPad. GraphPad started off as a CAD application, but quickly evolved into a complete tool for contractors and estimators to do all their work on the iPad while in the field. And critical to that is the creation of business forms, both inspection forms and proposals. Initially, GraphPad did not allow you to actually create these entities, these business forms. It was a much more laborious process, and it was all done by hand. But as the application improved, these features have been exposed to the end users. So now it's fully capable of creating, users are fully capable of creating their own business forms. So to start with, I'm going to start with a business form which I've created, which I've provide with the application, and I'll show some beginning features. So initially you'll notice you've got this company LLC, and that was actually being drawn from information that was provided inside the application. So you could put this information in, and it would show up in various forms that were provided. That's no longer necessary. However, we can start with these forms and do our own modifications. So to begin with, I'm just going to show a simple case of modifying a form. And to do that, the first thing we need to do is we need to change it from a form into just elements that can be edited. And conceptually, the form elements and the editable elements are completely separate. So to switch them over so you can now edit this business form, what we need to do is go to Text, Settings, and hit Edit Form. And now you'll notice all these entities have changed, and they've moved over into an editable, editable entities. So one thing I'm going to recommend when modifying a business form, and say in this example we're going to take all this information down and we're going to move a company logo into the upper right hand corner, is that when we translate these items, we translate using a fixed dimension, and we don't try and move it by hand. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this over to 0.5 squares basically, and we'll save that hitting enter. And now the next time we open it, that should be there. And what we'll do is we'll create a selection area and grab the entities we want to move. And now we'll translate those using the offset button. So now we don't have to worry about realigning anything or getting anything out of whack. The next thing I'll do is I'll just add an image. And to kind of cover something that's fairly basic in this, let's see, I think I've got a form entities can include line, text, and images, and that's pretty much it. And most recently, it can incorporate a PDF as a background. So the image, we can actually take our company logo. We would put that into the application, into iPad through the photo library. So you would use either email an image to yourself and then press on the image and load it into the photo library. But once we've got it in there, we would pull it out of the photo library and then we'd put it onto our drawing. And we could move this in and we could use snap and everything, so it'd be exactly where we want it to be. So at this point, to save this as a new form, we would go to our file menu and hit Save Template. And now we're going to put in the file name that it's going to store inside the documents for it to read. And so we'll just call this Test1. Now, if we wanted to actually use this form, we would just go into New. We'll now see a new entity down here, and apparently I've done this a couple of times, Test1, and we now have our new entity, and these are no longer editable, right? So they've gone back to being form entities, and they can't be moved, but when we type in our fields, etc. Now, a couple of things to actually point out is that what are these entities called? Because that's going to be important. So the first thing I'm going to do, and let's go ahead and launch this form again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Text Mode, Settings, and I'm going to turn on the field names. And so if we zoom in now, we'll see the field names that are actually being used by the application. So one of the aspects that's important for integration is that these field names agree not only with what's in GraphPad and customer name, customer city, those field names are represented inside of our appointments. And so if I bring up appointment, I'll demonstrate that. So for example, Customer name is actually pulled from this name field. Customer address is pulled from this field, city, etc. And so those names are actually pretty important if you want to integrate. Now, when GraphPad actually works with a backend system, what it does is it passes all this information from the backend system down as JSON and then puts it in as field names or as key value pairs. And so you can not only download from your backend system customer name and customer city, but any other information. And if the field that's created inside of GraphPad, if the name of that field corresponds to the field that is being downloaded from your server, it'll pre-populate. So let's just kind of with these fields, just show that example. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a particular appointment, grab this one down here. We'll see that the name is George Mason and it's 964 East Street. If I open up the form that we just edited, we'll notice that those fields are populated. Now having the labels turned on is makes it a little messy, so we'll turn those off and we'll see George Mason and 964 East Street as being populated inside our new form. And again, if we integrated this with a backend system, then that information would, any other information we put in, if we put in an extra text field, the appointments form is not going to know what to do with that because it's a static form, right? You can't edit this and put in additional fields. But behind this is actually capturing that as JSON and key value pairs and then just populates it up into these fields, but it's everything else that it brought down from the server. So I can't really demonstrate that because I'd have to go and create new fields inside my database. So, but if you get to an integration project, then please contact me and I'll help you through that. Now the other thing to be aware of is that the fields that are associated, what type of fields we have. And so static fields, if we create a field, and we'll kind of close that out, we'll go into our properties. We have this type. And so depending upon what we specify in this type for this field is going to dictate how it performs when it's created as part of a standard form. So our standard form that we can enter data into is the type 2. We would just put 2 in there, and I'll demonstrate by just putting in a 2. And now we'll notice even in this interface it's going to change color. If we put in, for example, a name, this would be the key value pair key that would actually integrate with your backend system and also copy data between pages. And so if I specify, for example, we'll just call this test return. Be sure to hit the return, by the way. If I change that into a form and I typed in a value for test, when I open another page of that same form, test value would be populated. It just caches it as a key value pair when you're running the application in that particular form. Checkbox is a checkbox, and all it's going to do is it's going to fill the value, or fill the square that we've created with color if it's checked, and make it blank if it's unchecked, but it will have a boundary around it. A numeric keypad, since I was doing so many fields which were either dates or numbers, I just took the same form field and made it so it popped up a numeric key value keypad. List values is going to show a list of values, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Same thing with a signature field. So let's go through that, and what we'll do is we'll open a new form, and I'll open my test one again, and we'll just go into each one of these fields, and we can actually go and show, well actually I don't think I can demonstrate the types. Sorry, I can't demonstrate the types. But I can do the field names, and if I go and I type in a value, this is a type 2, it's just a text field. City again is a text field, type 2, return. We'll notice it's tabbing between each field. This is a type 4, which is a numeric keypad field. And actually I can't show this, sorry about that. Numeric keypad, or standard keypad, and then this would be a list back, and in this case it doesn't have the value populated. What we can do, change this to editable, and now I can actually show as I touch each one of these fields which one, excuse me, that's just a label. So this is a type 5, that's the one that brought down the list values. And now we see that the list ID is 2001. If we look under my list, I don't have a 2001 in there. if I added it very quickly. Let me see if I can put in that number. Put in states, save, and now, whoops, yep, that was right. Add a value of okay. So now if I went back to this field, new, I have to save this first. File, save template. Actually, I wouldn't because it was already associated with 2. So new, and where's my test 2? I think there's a bug in the system. North Carolina appears. Okay. Okay, so this seems fairly straightforward in how to manipulate it. These can get quite complicated. So let's say, for example, we open our multi-page construction proposal. This is a drawing sheet. If we go to the second page, it blows up. Let's try this again. Construction proposal, go to the second page, and let's turn all of our field names on, and we can see the number of fields that we have populated here. So these fields can then be used in calculation, not only be used to both import and export data from the backend system, but we can use those in calculations. So if we bring up our calculations, so I've got count 1 times item 1 cost gives us cost 1. So if we look over here, we've got count 1 times item 1 cost, and that's that value over there. Some of the other calculations, if we scroll down, we have a project's total, and that's going to, we'll scroll down so we can actually see this. Takes our total costs, which is this field here, plus our total permits, which is this field here, and populates it into our total all. So that shows how these calculations work. As you can see, even though you start with either a PDF or an existing document, this can still be quite a bit of work that has to be done. So the last thing I'm going to demonstrate is the import of a PDF and using that as a background. So what I'll do is I've sent myself an email that has a multi-page document as a PDF. Sorry, this is the PDF so you can actually see this. Right, so it's a fairly elaborate form. If we press and hold on this, we'll see all of the applications that can import this PDF. And GraphPad's one of them. If we just tap on GraphPad, it's going to load that. Now, a couple of things have happened automatically for us. It's automatically resized the drawing space to the size of the PDF. But it hasn't added any of these fields, so we'd have to actually lay these out. And what we would do is we would just go into text mode. We would just create our field. You probably don't want to pre-populate with any text in a lot of cases, but you could actually set that up. And now if we go into properties and we press on that field, this is how we would actually put in the name. So if we wanted it to be customer name, we just type that in. We could put a default value. Now it's very important that we hit return for that to be populated. We could put a default value in there. So say, for example, we always want to talk to Rob as the customer. We could put that in. We'd actually see that. And again, this is where we actually specify the type. So if it's a normal field, it'd be a type 2. Just have to remember that. If we had a list value associated with a type 5, we'd populate that there as well. We'd put in our sequence number. Since this is the first one, it's going to start with 0 and then go forward. But if we had multiple fields, we'd actually put those new sequence numbers so it tabbed through. Now, the other thing that's very important is when we've loaded a PDF, if it's multi-page, in order for it to recognize that it's got multiple pages, we have to go through each one of the pages we're going to present. We'll go to this second page, and what we'll do is we'll zoom in and we'll put a signature field over here just for demonstration purposes. Don't want to pre-populate that with any data, but we'll go over here and we'll set that to a type 7 just so we can see how this works. 7, return. Okay, and now we'll take this and we'll save this as a template. And in our naming convention, we'll call this test 3. And now if we want to launch this, we'd go into new, search for test 3. It's a problem with the application that actually names those incorrectly. I'll fix that. So we've got our labels turned on, unfortunately, turn those off. But now if we go into text mode, we can type in our value. Okay, and if we go to our second field, we can put in our signature. So that shows pretty much everything that you need to know about creating a form. This is still part of the application that's being developed. I've been creating forms for a while, but I haven't given this capability to end users to create this. But between the integration capabilities, right, so we can plot our appointments. Currently, this is the only integration I'm offering is through a set of appointments for your salesman to actually go to, and then they would open up the particular thing. At this point, it would download from the server any information that it needed, and then it would pre-populate your form. So as long as your fields within your form match the data that's being downloaded, the key and key value pairs for your JSON, then that data should pre-populate for you. And just to demonstrate that one last piece one more time, I'll just do a drawing worksheet, and we'll see that actually the information from that appointment was pre-populated. But again, this would be not only the information from that form, but any other data as well. And that's my presentation. Thanks.